For most people, the ocean is out of sight and out of mind, but it isn't for me. I've spent my entire life on the ocean, and I've seen the wholesale destruction firsthand. In my world, there are two oceans. The ocean that exists in the popular imagination, a boundless, bountiful place, an inexhaustible resource teeming with marine wildlife. A place that is the sum of the stories that are told through the narrow lens of nature documentaries and through the propaganda of fishing companies. Then, there's the ocean as it exists in reality, a factory floor being worked over by machines. I've seen fishing vessels dragging nets big enough that they could envelop an entire cathedral. Setting nets around schools of fish that could encircle an entire city block. Ships putting out long lines sporting hundreds or thousands of hooks, cutting across migration corridors that have existed for eons. I've seen whales caught in nets, sharks dragged across the deck by their gills, fish fighting for their last breath. I've seen the ocean that exists beyond visual sight of land. 1/3 of shark species are endangered. 300,000 whales and dolphins are being killed through fishing gear entanglement every single year. Out of the 7 species of sea turtles, 6 are either threatened or endangered, although there isn't a single fishery in the world deliberately targeting sea turtles. Populations of large fish like tuna are down to 10% of what they were 50 years ago. The United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization believe that 90% of the world's fisheries are either fully exploited or overexploited. And driving this overfishing problem, exacerbating it, making it worse, is illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing, responsible for 1 out of 5 fish caught.
Stage Bravo. Vessel is actively fishing.
Copy, thank you.
Foreign fishing fleets are focused on West Africa because it's a place that still has fish to catch. The European Union fishing fleet is at about 2.5 times the capacity of what can be fished in European waters. Because there's hardly any fish left to catch off the coast of China, there's a Chinese distant water fishing fleet that's fishing further afield. And these foreign fishing fleets take advantage of the monitoring, control, and surveillance challenges that exist in West Africa. A lot of the countries on the coast are resource stretched. So they have a Coast Guard, they have a Navy, but they don't necessarily have the vessel asset that can cover the entirety of their maritime jurisdiction.
Let's get the teams ready and let's put the boats in the water as quickly as we can.
Sea Shepherd is an international marine conservation organization that's unique in the ocean protection space. The government of Gabon invited Sea Shepherd to help patrol Gabonese waters because they recognized Sea Shepherd's expertise with ships, coupled with the reality that the fishing vessels operating in those waters had never been boarded and inspected before. When a Sea Shepherd ship arrives in the port of a partner country, the first thing we do is pick up the law enforcement agents from the host nation. We're providing the ship and the crew who run the vessel, but it's our partner country providing the law enforcement agents with the authority to board, inspect, and arrest ships.
BMS information.
When we're on patrol, we're targeting two kinds of fishing activity. We're looking for legal vessels that we know are licensed to fish in the waters of our partner country. And those vessels need to be checked to ensure that they're complying with the law. But we're also boarding and inspecting illegal fishing boats, vessels that are blatantly breaking the law, ships that can be arrested and brought back to port to face justice. Illegal fishing is a threat to ocean health because you cannot manage that which you cannot measure. Illegal fishing is the black market of fishing. These are operators that do not pay their fishing license fee, so authorities don't know what they're actually taking and what they're actually doing on their waters. These are boats using prohibited fishing gear that's banned because it's particularly destructive. They're targeting endangered species like sharks. They're fishing in prohibited areas that are reserved for wildlife or set aside to protect the livelihoods of small-scale artisanal fishermen in developing countries.
Neck bridge. Stack guard. Neck bridge, we have a target. With that, we'll get the boats ready.
When we locate a suspected target, more often than not, this happens at night. We immediately go to action stations. We have to act covertly to maintain the element of surprise. We have to check our communications equipment, and we have to get into our small boats quickly and proceed to the target before they can escape and destroy any evidence on board. The challenges of conducting these patrols are many. We only have a small handful of ships covering large surface areas of ocean. The legal frameworks that exist are oftentimes not strong enough, and so the patrols allow us to see where there are loopholes in the law that are being exploited and where legal frameworks can be strengthened to create greater deterrence. The poachers themselves adapt to our tactics, and so our strategy, our tactics have to change along with it.
We need to come in your boat for one inspection.
Yes, I know.
And that's why the work doesn't end with one arrest. We have to maintain a constant presence at sea. Our patrols have to continue to create deterrence that prevents these illegal fishing boats from coming back. Once we've intercepted the fishing vessel, the law enforcers have to scramble up rope ladders to get up to the bridge of that fishing boat as quickly as they can.
For the fisheries inspectors, time is now of the essence. They have to get on board before the fish comes up on deck and make sure no evidence is being destroyed.
They present their credentials to the fishing boat captain and start going through vessel documentation. They muster the crew of the fishing boat and then start searching the ship for contraband, looking in the fish holes to see if what the ship is declaring and what they're actually doing matches up.
With the fishing logbooks checked, we know what the vessel claims to have caught in the past. Let's see what they bring on deck today.
Industrialized operators don't just kill the fish they're targeting, but also what the industry refers to as bycatch. I call bycatch the invisible victims of the fishing industry. This is what the industry would refer to as incidental or accidental take, and yet, because of the indiscriminate nature of industrialized fishing, bycatch is factored into the economics of fishing. In the 1980s, fishing vessels were deliberately setting their nets on dolphin pods, using them as a bullseye to target the tuna schools that swim together with dolphins. That resulted in hundreds of thousands of dolphins dying through the tuna fishery every single year and created a popular movement for the creation of dolphin-safe tuna. Dolphin-safe certification hasn't eliminated dolphin deaths, although it has reduced them by a certain amount. But the same cannot be said for sharks. Shark deaths because of the tuna industry is still in the millions. People buying dolphin-safe tuna are not buying shark-safe tuna. As sharks are brought up onto the deck of a fishing vessel together with tuna, there are two courses of action that the fishing operator can follow. If they're operating illegally, then they'll hack the fins off that shark, throwing the body overboard and just holding on to the fins. But if it's a legal operator, they'll discard the sharks overboard. The statistics from the European Union are that about only 5% of these sharks will end up dying after being released, but actually the inverse is true. About 95% of them won't survive. I've never been on board a single tuna boat that didn't also have dead sharks on board. There is a way to bring the empty ocean, as it is in reality, into realignment with the ocean that people imagine to be a wilderness. And that's through the enforcement of the conservation laws that we already have in place, setting aside areas of the ocean as sanctuaries for wildlife, creating marine protected areas. The government of Gabon was driven to create marine parks because of the uniqueness of its wildlife on land. And so the Gabonese government recognized that national parks on land wasn't enough. To protect its iconic megafauna, protections had to extend out to sea. And that goes both ways. It means if we want to protect the oceans of Gabon, we also have to take the fight to land.
During Sea Shepherd's albacore missions in Gabon, we noticed a lot of shark and ray bycatch on the industrial fishing vessels. And it's when the Minister of Fisheries was aboard that he noticed as well the importance to preserve the sharks in Gabon better. And that's where we decided to collaborate with Gabon's government to set up a first shark sanctuary in Gabon. The first step that we did for this project was the Ministry of Fisheries in Gabon, who published a bylaw on sustainable fishing of sharks and rays. First one being the classification of all sharks and rays in Gabon, meaning critically endangered shark and ray species are fully protected by law and cannot be fished anymore by industrial nor artisanal fisheries. Vulnerable species are partially protected, and then the common species can still be fished, although those that can still be fished should be landed with a fence attached. Another part is the ban on the export of any shark or shark byproducts. It's thanks to the grant of the Dutch postcode lottery that Sea Shepherd could now work together with the National Agency of National Parks in Gabon. This agency is part of the Ministry of Environment, and they have jurisdiction over the marine protected areas in Gabon. These marine protected areas don't have the infrastructure yet to survey legal fishing within their zones, and therefore they need the support of Sea Shepherd. When we received the grant of the Dutch postcode lottery, we signed an MOU with Gabon's National Agency of National Parks. And we divided the project in two big parts. First one being direct enforcement, law enforcement on sea, and second one being scientific monitoring. For the law enforcement, we purchased 4 new vessels for the national parks of Gabon. We also give budgets for the eco guards that go on these vessels and to control on illegal fishing within the parks. And also fuel was provided for 3 years over the project. Thanks to the grant, ANPN can now enforce directly the shark law within their marine national parks.
Je suis assistant technique en biologie marine à l'Agence des parcs nationaux. Et au-dessus de cela, je travaille pour le projet Sanctuaire de requins chapeauté par Sea Shepherd Global. Et justement, nous avons pour ce projet recruté des enquêteurs. Alors oui, il y a un réseau d'enquêteurs, ou du moins, comment on les appelle, des observateurs, dont leur travail sera typiquement de collecter la donnée sur les débarcadères, mais à bord des pirogues. Comment ça va se faire à bord des pirogues? Ils vont embarquer avec des pêcheurs afin d'aller voir de visu, d'accord, séance tenante, ce qui se passe. Quelles sont les réalités que rencontrent les pêcheurs sur le terrain? Est-ce que tout de suite, quand il a capturé la raie ou le requin, pardon, il relâche ou il garde? Ce sont ces réalités dont on a besoin dans le cadre de ce projet. Et au niveau des débarcadères, il ne va pas se limiter qu'à prendre les espèces de raies et de requins, mais justement évaluer aussi la capture totale fournie par le pêcheur. Donc là, nous avons un réseau à Port-Gentil, nous avons 4 enquêteurs. À Libreville, on a, je crois, une dizaine, et on a un à Coco Beach. Et à Mayumba, en ce moment, on en a 3. Ils deviennent du personnel qualifié, je dirais, parce qu'ils sont capables de collecter la donnée dont on a besoin dans le cadre du projet.
C'est pas le langage biologique, mais ça sont les raies pastinales. Les raies pastinales sont celui-là, c'est le requin balai. Le corps 10 mètres.
Mais l'idée ici, c'est surtout que le Gabon serve de phare, en fait, d'exemple, un modèle exemplaire parce qu'on essaie de faire de notre mieux avec le peu de moyens que nous disposons, de conserver la biodiversité qui nous est donnée par le Dieu. Donc ici, c'est de servir d'exemple. Le Gabon, c'est un starting, on a débuté avec le Gabon. Pourquoi pas ce projet s'étendre sur d'autres pays de l'Afrique? Voilà, c'est ça l'idée. Donc le projet s'étend sur 3 années qui peuvent être renouvelées. Et l'idée, c'est d'emboîter le pas et de faire du Gabon un pays autonome en matière de conservation.
When you speak of species conservation, it's also important to involve the local communities, as they depend on the fish daily. They need to feed their families, and therefore they need to understand as well while we set in place laws like these, like conserving sharks. ANPN set up these workshops and goes to talk with local fishermen communities within the four corners of Gabon. They explain the ecological importance of sharks in their ecosystems and how it affects the whole food chain if we overfish sharks. So all the information that we gather during the project now, especially speaking of the data, we will present this to the decision makers in Gabon. It's the data evidence that will provide decision makers of the crucial information that they need to change the legislation. What I find truly interesting about the grant that we received from the Dutch postcode lottery is that a Dutch citizen who would buy a lottery ticket in the Netherlands has a true impact on shark conservation in Gabon.
Most of the population in the world feeds on fish. It needs the ocean to survive. It's even more important than land because the world is covered more of oceans than of lands.
Allez, encore une fois, qu'est-ce qu'on a appris aujourd'hui? Si les océans meurent, nous mourrons aussi!
And given the two options, if they're heading to Port Gentil, then they're not fishing. So if we had to roll the dice, it would be better to head south, assuming that they turned around.
Since the start of our partnership with the government of Gabon in 2016, we've achieved significant milestones together. Just 2 years after the start of our joint patrols, the government of Gabon created the single largest network of marine protected areas in Africa, 26% of Gabonese waters protected. Footage captured by our media crew have led to legislative change in Gabon, where the government has banned the deliberate setting of nets on whales and whale sharks. Through boardings and inspections of trawlers fishing off the Gabonese coastline, the uncovering of shark finning operations, the government of Gabon banned the finning of sharks, rays, and skates. Through these patrols, over a dozen vessels have been arrested, creating significant deterrence for illegal activity. This model of cooperation and collaboration has been replicated in other neighboring countries. Sea Shepherd now working together with 8 countries around the African continent and taking this unique partnership model to other parts of the world, including the South Pacific. There's a reason why Gabon is referred to as the world's last Eden. This is a place that's largely untouched, where you can sail a whole day up and down the coast and not see anything other than wildlife and wilderness. There are a lot of places in the world that have been emptied of fish. But Gabon is one of the world's last wild places, and for me, it's a suitable place to take a solid stand for wildlife.